Welcome back to Marlene and Friends in service for a healthy world for humans and non-humans alike. Dr. McDougall, it's been 5 years since our last interview, and as I always refer to you as the man of truth, you're sharing your food message, which is the biggest thing we can all do right now to change the world. Yet it's never talked about. So I want to convey to you a huge thank you from every corner of the globe, because you are so loved and appreciated, and I want to tell you that we've all missed your warrior spirit.
You like that spirit, huh? It doesn't seem to be dying as I age. I thought I'd be calming down, but I'm getting a little bit more out of control.
No, I think
Let's see how things go today.
I think it's fantastic, and we've all missed you. You know, students and clients around the world will say, when is Dr. McDougall going to be back online? So, you know,
Right.
you're so,
I'm back.
So blessed, and I think it's important at this time with the pandemic and everything that's going on that
Right.
the world gets behind you, because you're the man of truth, you're the man with the message. So the first thing I want to...
I'd like to stop there for just a second. I've spent 50 years doing this.
Yeah.
And I've always, I've gone and bounced myself along the way off different walls and had my trials and tribulations, to say the least. But I had to believe that all that I went through had to be for a purpose. I kept saying, what is it going to be? And I realized I've made some contributions in terms of understanding nutrition, particularly the practical aspects. But I always felt frustrated. And I hate to be religious about it, but I always felt like there was some purpose I had, but I didn't feel like I was going to live long enough to see it. Well, not only do I feel like I'm going to live long enough to see that volition of my career, but I think I'm going to see the end of the world, which really has me disturbed. Yeah. And so, a lot of my attention will be focused around my latest concern. The first 50 years, I was concerned about your health. I was concerned about your chronic diseases and the suffering that you went through obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancers, and so on, which were, when I first started studying this 50 years ago, which are considered unknown to science as far as the cause goes. Well, that's all changed. We've gotten to a point in history where people understand that the rich Western diet is killing people, and that you could cure most of the maladies from the rich Western diet by switching to a diet based on starch, which is rice, corn, potatoes, beans, peas, and lentils, with the addition of fruits and vegetables. These are all the foods you love, things like oatmeal for breakfast, pancakes for breakfast. For lunch and dinner, you can have mushu vegetables, spaghetti marinara sauce, bean burritos, all kinds of soups. I mean, there's just a whole variety of things that you can have that you really enjoy. Get to eat a little bit of spice, salt, a little bit of sugar. But what you don't get to eat are the bland or mal-tasting animal foods and the oils, which are very disgusting. Pure oil people find impalatable. So I spent the first half of my life dedicated toward trying to share with people the importance of good nutrition where they could cure. I told my chief of medicine, when I graduated from my residency, my medical residency in 1986, I told him, I said, 80% of the illnesses that I take care of as an internist, as a board-certified internist, are due to what we eat. And what really shocked him was when I said, if you stop throwing gasoline on a fire, they'll get well. And that was in 1986. I told him that. Actually, it was in 1978 was when I graduated from my residency. In 86 is when I went into strictly the practice of lifestyle medicine. Prior to that, between 78 and 86, I had to practice kind of a mixed breed of medicine to support myself, to stay alive, so to speak. Well, life happens, and as time went on, I got interested in the future. Not necessarily my future. As I said, I always thought that I would die before the world ended. And irrelevant to me, except for the fact that I have children and grandchildren. So from the point of view of my children and grandchildren, I lost my focus of attention in terms of chronic illnesses, which are so important. I mean, more than half of the world suffers from diseases of overnutrition. I turned my focus away from chronic illness, which is okay. As you say, I've written a lot about it, spoken a lot about it. I have very little to say. I mean, I've pretty much said all I can say. The details are irrelevant. The major message is there for you. So I became interested in the climate. And what I discovered was that the bulk of the damage to the climate is done by the livestock industry, which kind of fit into my field of food. And I found out that this was somewhere between 18% of the global warming gases, as opposed to the other extreme, which would be 51%, which really isn't the other extreme. Some people say even 70% of the global warming gases are directly the result of the livestock industry. That means beef, pork, fish, etc., those kinds of industries. So I figured that the only way we're going to get this straightened out in terms of the world and saving the planet is to fix the major cause of the problem, which is the food, which happened to fit in, not coincidentally, but happened to fit in with the ideas that I had about helping you individually, helping the planet. I could help my grandchildren, but it was one of frustration. I went on, and I can tell you how long it's been. It's been 16 years, because that's my oldest grandson. He's 16 years old. It's been going on for 16 years, and I have been frustrated. I'd have to say, as close as I get to depression, I've been depressed. I felt hopeless, and then COVID-19 came along. And it really changed everybody's outlook. I mean, through the entire world, it showed people that we can change when necessary, overnight. Yeah, we can. We have the capability of change. I mean, we shut down the entire world. Human beings did overnight. And some of the world stayed shut down. Others are still trying to recuperate from their mistakes. Far from over is the pandemic, COVID-19. Far from being over. But it showed people that they can change. They can survive without all the transportation. I mean, all the airplanes, all the cars, all the trains. They could do that. We don't have to go to work every day. We don't have to go to restaurants. We don't have to go to coliseums. We can do these things from home and survive comfortably. Well, that opened my eyes and gave me hope, to tell you the truth. At least, and this was reflected by the way of improvements in the environment. You could see the blue sky in China, which is something new in the cities. You could see the fish in the Venice canals. Animals wandered where they'd never wandered in decades. So anyway, there's some glimpses that the environment will recover if you stop abusing it. So it gave me hope that we as a species could change, and that we had an experience with COVID-19, which would cause us to realize the peril that we're in time to do something about it. The thing is we could have come to these same realizations about the threat to our society, about the threat to our species, the same realizations slowly, which we were doing through climate change. We got to the point where, there was water 40 feet over Miami. And then you're going to make the changes? No, I don't think so. It's far too late. It may be too late now, but I'm not going to take that attitude. I'm going to take the attitude that we can still fix things. It's going to take the grace of God. It's going to take a whole bunch of miraculous things to occur that I don't even know exist, but I think we can make it. But only through the advantage of knowledge that's been brought to us through a tragedy known as the pandemic COVID-19. Wow. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's the same diet, the same cause, the same human motivations, et cetera, that play out in all three of these areas. I'd like to try and do, I made this slide here. I don't know whether we can put, so I want you to, again, I talked about these three different situations, which you may have considered unrelated, which I see tied together. They also involve a basic understanding of what the truth is. The truth is simple and easy to understand. If somebody gives you an explanation that's above your understanding, first think that it's their problem. They're not a good communicator, because the truth is simple and easy to understand. When it comes to COVID-19, the health measures that have made a difference will make a difference. The only ones we have available to us are isolation and standard public health messages. Wash your hands, wear a mask, etc. Vaccinations and treatments are a far off hope at best. And it's going to take a tremendous amount of money and effort on society to do these complex things, these difficult things, whereas isolation and standard public health measures are something that we as individuals can do, cost-free, et cetera. When it comes to chronic illnesses, it's been the same thing for me for 50 years. Diet therapy has been the solution. I told my chief of medicine back in 1986, 80% of the illnesses were caused by what my patients ate. And most of those can be cured by stopping the cause of the problem. That's a simple solution. But no, for the last 50 years, and I couldn't understand why. basic human needs and greeds. But for the past 50 years, my colleagues, the entire field of medicine, with few exceptions, has ignored this simple approach, which is free, side effect free, cost free, nearly 100% effective, good for all other aspects of our lives. Yeah, they've ignored the simple approach. And it comes also with climate change. Reduce CO2 and other pollutants. No, people are talking about carbon capture. Excuse me, they've been talking about it for 15 years. I'm tired of hearing about it. My son is in the oil industry. He came home with that nonsense about carbon capture, and I said, sure. You think you and whatever your oil company's name is are smart enough to invent carbon capture to overcome all the evil that you've done? No, it's not going to happen. So the truth is simple and easy to understand. Let's see how these are all tied together. I'll try to put this map together for you. I'd like to have a little feedback from you on it, is that diet is tied to chronic disease, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, et cetera, have been proved beyond a shadow of a doubt to be caused by the rich Western diet and are cured in most cases. I'd give the exception of advanced cancers, but in most cases are cured by changing to a healthy diet, a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. So that's how you deal with chronic disease. Estimates are that with climate change, if everybody changed to a vegan diet, that we reduce CO2 production as high as 80%. And that's overnight. And something we can all do, simple, easy to understand, cost-free, side effect-free, et cetera, to eat like you and I do. And future contagions, fine, COVID-19 would get a vaccine for. How about COVID-21 or COVID-25 or Ebola 5? I don't know. I mean, with climate change, with the transportation the way it is, the world the way it is, you better expect there'll be new threatening contagions right around the corner. So you need to make your defenses strong and reliable and self-sufficient, like hand washing and isolation, and the food, which is what I'd like to talk about now. One of the things that I've learned through the years is that that chronic illness is caused by repetitive injuries, and acute illnesses are caused by single injuries. Now, let me spend a minute defining this for you. Acute illnesses are things like a laceration or a broken bone or an abscess. It's a sudden attack on the body. Here, the doctor intervenes with a cast or some sutures or a drainage or an antibiotic. The doctor intervenes, and the doctor is thrilled with his or her results. The patient is thrilled with his or her results, but that was due to a single injury and an intervention. Okay, I am a very successful doctor when I deal with acute illnesses. When it comes to chronic disease, I'm a failure, and so are all other doctors, because chronic illnesses are due to repetitive injuries. For example, a chronic cough is often due to repetitive injuries from a cigarette smoker. 20, 40 times a day, we injure ourselves. The healing is going on, but it can't catch up with the injury. That's the problem. And so when we stop the injury, like the cigarette smoking, what happens? Essentially 100% of the smokers get better. Most of them get rid of their cough, etc. The problem with the cells in the cells of the arteries and the cells of the body, etc., they get damaged repetitively by an uncontrolled fork and spoon that can't keep out of the poisonous foods that Americans eat, and the rest of Europeans and the rest of the world is starting to. And what happens is the body's trying to injure. You got to realize your arteries are healing. That's why you have the plaques. The cancers are going away. Well, they're coming back too because you're making new ones. The multiple sclerosis, the myelin sheaths are healing, but they're also being damaged by more attacks from the autoimmune system. And so it continues, and the injury outstrips the ability of the body to heal. Now, that analogy, I'd like to take one more step for you to the planet, where you have to be a believer. This is where I've had to bring most of my faith forward, is to believe, because I've been, as I told you, depressed, so overwhelmed by the fact that my children and grandchildren have no future. So you have to take and maybe have a little bit of faith, like you would if you're a doctor in my generation or the generations that have followed, who had to believe, and a few of us did, that the body would heal itself if you stopped injuring it with cigarette smoke, with the fork and spoon. We had to believe that. And very few of us have, by the way. But those who have believed it and the resulting patients have ended up with great health. So we keep believing this. All right. Well, I want you to take that faith, if you've learned that because you've been a patient and you've seen that by a simple maneuver, something easy to understand, easy to do, by a simple maneuver, you have cured yourself of high blood pressure, obesity, constipation, etc. By this simple principle, you just stop the repetitive injury. So take that belief and continue it to the rest of the population. Do you think that we could cure, half the population who suffers from heart disease by changing to a diet of rice and corn and potatoes and fruits and vegetables? I know we could. Yeah. So if you come to that idea of belief, and some of you have, and some of you are on the way, and all you'll get there, it'll just take time. I want you to extend the powers of nature. I know you have to be a little theological, you have to be a little philosophical, but hey, take a step with me. Believe that nature extends itself beyond your own person. The nature will heal you. You've seen it. It'll heal beyond your own person. The healing power of nature is so great that it will heal Mother Earth. I believe that. I believe he, whatever you want, has such power of natural healing. I am so enamored by the beauty of nature. You have to be too. Every one of you has to be just as enamored as I am by nature and her abilities to survive and to rejuvenate. Okay, with that faith, then I have to approach the new challenge I have in life, which is, hey, really, whether or not half the population dies of COVID-19 is an issue. But hey, I'm going a little further than that. I'm on a road to avoid species extinction. And I'm talking about all species. I'm talking about planetary extinction. I'm talking about something that's going to happen within the next 6 to 12 years. Yeah, that's what the World Panel on Climate Change says. So wake up, folks. All right, so let's get to the point of what we're waking up to now. This is what COVID-19 is. It's the climate comet. Can you imagine the reaction of people on planet Earth if there was a comet that was going to hit the planet in, say, 6 years? I mean, China, Russia, US, Puerto Rico, everybody would be gathered together to make that rocket that would divert that comet to avoid planetary extinction. Well, I tell you, folks, COVID-19 is the climate comet. You've got to learn we have to learn from COVID-19. So we take and react in a timely manner, like we would with a comet heading our way. A couple other thoughts is that, we just went through this whole thing called, let's see, here it was. I don't know whether I could share this with you or not, but the problem has been to get the whole population of the planet interested. And we have a situation where young people say, young lives matter. You need to pay attention to climate change, the fact that we have no future. And old people, I know it's not true in general, it may be at some subconscious level, but old people are saying, look, I've got my retirement. I'm fat and happy. I've got my big cars, my big houses, my big resorts. I'm not going to change. So a lot of young lives don't matter. Okay, so now we have a whole other situation. We just flipped the coin. Same issues, same changes required, but we have the old people or the young people saying, the old people on the other side of the coin with COVID-19, the old people are saying, look, you young people, you got to be responsible. You're going to end up killing us all off with COVID-19. All lives matter. All lives matter. And we got to join together and get this straightened out. Let me explain to you why I think this is possible for us to do. It has to do with something that occurred back between 1918 and 1920 in Western Europe. So very much at home for you. And this occurred during World War I, during the northern blockade of Germany by Britain during World War I. Now, what we find is that geographically, that the blockade of the North Sea had to involve Denmark. You see the Denmark's right in that particular triangle or area of the world. So as a result of the blockade of food and medicine, et cetera, not only did Germany suffer shortages, but so did these underlying countries. Well, Denmark was one country that was under severe restriction because of the economic changes induced by World War I. Well, the response in Denmark was to listen to this man. This man, Dr. McDougall, was a famous nutritionist at that time, and he also worked with the government of Denmark. And his recommendation was based on his research, which was based on vegetarian diets and how people didn't need very much protein. What he recommended is that during the war, instead of starving like the rest of Europe did, instead of starving during the war, what we do is we change our food supply. And so what he did is put out a proclamation, which was received welcomely, not like certain things are rejected in the world today, but received welcomely by 3 million Danes. They decided that they would en masse change the diet and eat the food that the animals had been eating. If you were a pig farmer, maybe you got to have a little bit of pork. If you were one among the richest people in Copenhagen, you got to have a little beef. So as a result, I may have mentioned that other European countries went through severe nutritional suffering, starvation. Just to give you some statistics, 400,000 people in Germany starved to death during that period of time. Well, here is the publication of McDougall's work. It was in 1920, he published it in JAMA. And the title of the article is Effective Food Restriction During the War on Mortality in Copenhagen. It was published in JAMA. And what did the change that they made? They paid no attention to protein requirement because experiments done by Hindhede at that time. I mean, here we are 100 years later and still believing incorrect information. Experiments done by Hindhede back in the late 1800s proved that the requirement for protein for human beings was so low that it could not be reached. So they didn't pay attention to protein. Of course, protein is equivalent with meat and maybe dairy. Well, if fat was regarded as a valuable addition, it was not considered to be necessary, and bran was considered to be a very valuable food. Okay, so 3 million people went on a vegan diet, as I mentioned. Restrictions were severe, to say the least. What happened in death rate? The death rate, it was the lowest death rate that the Danes have ever seen. It dropped 34%. They figured that 6,000 people did not die during that period of time who would have otherwise died. And if you see, they're looking at death rate from all diseases, from infectious diseases, as well as other diseases, which are your chronic illnesses. So they changed their diet, which was proved in mass. 3 million people would change their diet when called upon to do so. The results were very evident in a reduction of death rate from all causes, particularly what I've focused on in the past is the death rate from heart disease and diabetes and so on plummeted. But maybe of great interest to you, and parallel to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is on everybody's mind, believe me, if you watch the news in the US, and I assume it's that way in Europe, that's all you hear because that's all people want to hear about is COVID-19. So let's put this 1919-1920 experiment in Denmark in context of the Spanish flu, which is going on at the same time during World War I. We had a war. And the people in Denmark changed their diet. Look at what happened as far as the mortality from Spanish flu between 1918 and 1919 in Germany, which is a top, Italy, which of course, I mean, this should be reminiscent of what's going on today. Are some of the isolation and social distancing methods that have been made, which have been effective. Let's not overlook that possibility of importance. You see England and Wales, which are, what are they, number 3 in the world today in terms of COVID-19 infections? So I don't know. They've certainly got a statistic that I don't think they're proud of in England. And of course, believe me, from the US, I have nothing to brag about. Denmark, you see the lowest death rate from the Spanish flu. They changed their diet to save food so they wouldn't starve, and nobody was hungry in Denmark during that period of time. They reduced their death rate from all diseases, including chronic disease like heart disease, that what I've spent the first 50 years of my life trying to help people with. And they reduce the risk of dying and suffering from serious complications for the people of Denmark by making the same simple dietary change. Cost-free, effortless, side effect-free. I mean, okay, so let's bring things back to the point that I want them to hit. Yeah. And that is the point that it's been troubling me for so long. And it really has to have been something on the front of everybody's mind, everybody who's aware of the possibilities for our future and our children's future. Come on, folks. Climate change has to be just aching at you. What an analogy. What a poor word to pick. It has to be really bugging you. The climate change issue, but you felt frustrated because there was nothing you could do. It was impossible for you personally to change, much less the society. Proven. COVID-19 has proved that to be false. We can change. We have done it over the world. We've cooperated. Not to the extent that we have to, but we have. And the changes are evident. And we can, when I said you had one simple truth, one easy truth to deal with COVID, all I mentioned was social isolation. Yeah. That's all I mentioned. But you have another tool in your toolbox that I really want to tell you about. It's the same tool you had in the toolbox when you dealt with chronic illnesses like heart disease and diabetes, but it's more effective. Yeah. I mean, consider the fact you go out in the world and 54% of the time, people who get COVID-19 can't identify the source of their infection. So even if we try hard, we're still susceptible. Well, what can we do to put up that barrier of defense so that we either won't catch it, or if we do catch it, we'll have mild illnesses? What we can do is we can strengthen ourselves. Now, how important is this, and how much of an established opinion has this become? Well, the CDC came out last month and said that those who have comorbid factors in their life, like obesity, heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, they are at 12 times the risk of going on to serious complications, the need for a ventilator, mechanical ventilation, and or death, 12 times. The British Medical Journal, the editor, Fiona, she came out last week, and she said that clearly the risk of you suffering from serious complications from COVID-19, remember they talk about, 85%, 90%, or some people say crazy, 99% of people are asymptomatic. Were you able to see the slides okay?
Yeah, that's great. No, the slides were fantastic, perfect. But I wanted to get you back on the big screen. You know, right. You must feel like just standing up and shouting, "Stop it!" You must.
I do. Stop the insanity. Yeah, it's crazy. But you know, everything is tying together.
Yeah.
And those who become aware, they become aware of everything all of a sudden. And they become aware of the connection of the climate and of the connection of chronic disease and the connection of food. I mean, true awareness involves that kind of understanding, and also should involve an opportunity to take action, which we've not done. So, because I think a lot of us have had the frustration, and myself included, of not feeling that we had an opportunity. We may have had the truth, but that truth was really impotent in the sense that it would not result in any particular change. Well, as I've mentioned to you, and it deserves reemphasizing, COVID-19 changed all that for me. It changed me from a very pessimistic person to someone who has at least a level of optimism. Again, I'm not that I'm wishing this kind of suffering on people or economic suffering that follows. I'm not. But, you want to exchange that for extinction of all species on planet Earth? Yeah, I'll take that bargain.
Yeah, and I mean, you're an eternal optimist. You're known as being an eternal optimist. People might say you're a dreamer or it's unrealistic or whatever, but you have a vision that excites other people, and that's why your warrior spirit is just so commendable. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's fantastic. I think it's exciting also that I know many people around the world are excited that you're offering now the McDougall inaugural program online. And
Yes.
if I could just ask you a couple of questions that I've been getting, from some people around that as well. For example, what do you see the goal of the online course is?
Marley, my whole goal, my whole career has been to make people aware.
Yeah.
It hasn't been to make them do things, but just to make them aware. Like, for example, with cigarette smoking. When I was growing up as a kid, baseball players and models were advertising cigarettes. And my parents were not aware of the harmful effects of tobacco smoke. That was wrong. They should have at least been informed. Likewise, I've tried to make people aware of the importance of diet on their personal health and now upon the health of the planet and this acute problem of COVID-19. Now, I started out with a small amount of writing and a small amount of lecturing. I can remember lecturing to 4 people in a small group of women. And continuing on with the attitude that, eventually maybe I'll get this right and I'll be able to convey to people the important message that I held deep inside. And it was trapped inside here. So what I've done over the last, 50 plus years, been since 1977, what I have done is I have tried to figure out ways to convey the message. Mary and I have written 13 national best-selling books. I've done literally hundreds of videos, and most of them are available on my website. I've made my website entirely free until recently. It went entirely free during the COVID-19 epidemic, and we felt that we should become a totally teaching institute at that time. But pretty much everything is free on the website. And been many other projects I've been involved in. Probably the most effective thing that I've done is to design a residential program. And I ran residential programs for about 36 years, initially at St. Helena Hospital for 16 years, and then at the resort up until, for about 18 years. So close to 30 years I've run residential programs where I've been able to lock people up, educate them, help them with their medical problems, and get them to change. And that has been the most effective thing. But I still had a dream. And that dream was to go out to people where they are, And I didn't, it really wasn't a practical form of medicine in the fact, because of acceptance. I knew that way was by telemedicine. And when COVID-19 came along and the feelings about telemedicine changed, and the legislative rules changed about telemedicine, I saw this opportunity. So as a result, you no longer have to travel by airplane, by train, by car, by boat to come to the McDougall program. We'll come to you. You don't have to suffer in a hotel room for 10 to 12 days without your beloved family. We'll come to you. You get to have at least as good a medical care. In fact, maybe better. I was thinking maybe the doctor-patient relationship will be better when it is separated by a video screen. Because one of the biggest problems with doctor-patient relationships is that the doctor dominates the setting and the patient feels looked upon and doesn't feel like an equal partner sharing in the development of the future health program that allows them to have the health and appearance that they deserve. So it's too threatening to go into the doctor's office, the doctor's nurses, the doctor's equipment, the doctor's everything. Now, I as a doctor get to come in your house. Well, we just equalize the situation. Maybe we can make this the partnership we've always dreamed it would be. And we're able to cut the cost of the program, not just considering the travel et cetera. We were able to cut the cost of the program in half.
It's fantastic. And
Yeah.
I believe, do you have personal one-to-one medical care offered for people?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we give the same kind of medical care, lacking the touching, the same kind of medical pictures and everything. Mm-hmm. Board certified medical doctors. Dr. Lim is the medical director of our program. He and I will be seeing patients initially. And we have other doctors who work. We have 7 other physicians who work for us now that I train personally. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, those doctors will visit you initially for your initial H&P, your prescription as far as medication reduction or stoppage. Our goal is to get you off drugs. Our scientific research says that we can reduce or stop nearly 90% of the medications that people take for chronic disease. Yeah. So we want to get you off your drugs. Most of you shouldn't be taking anyway, regardless of whether you change your diet. The addition of a good diet solving the problems will get you off more of the medications for more of the right reasons. We want to get you out of unnecessary surgery. One of the things you'll notice if you follow what has happened recently is that the death rate of people worldwide has gone down as hospitals have closed. Yeah, it's just like in LA. The emergency rooms closed in LA about 20 years ago. And the death rate of people in the city went down dramatically. Yeah. So we're going to, we're going to make it less accessible for you to get to the surgeon, because you're going to stop by us first. And hopefully we can avoid some of the difficulties by making this kind of interjection. Plus, we get to come into your home any day you want. So we have that, plus our dietitian, Jeff Novick. He is going to be doing one-on-one sessions, as well as Doug Lyle, our psychologist, as well as many of almost all of our staff. We're going to have a lot of hand-holding in the first part of the program. Yeah, I think you're going to get better. I know you're going to get better medical care than you ever got coming to our clinic. And besides that, it's pretty much on demand. So beyond what we supply in terms of the program, you can have whatever you want. And whatever we're able to apply, we'll offer you in terms of medical care, doctor time, nurse time, laboratory testing, etc., all within reason. We've got it for you in your home, supplied by telemedicine, at a very reasonable cost.
And what will be so fantastic for people, Dr. McDougall, in their own kitchen, right? Because I'm assuming you'll be having cooking demonstrations, so people can be cooking along with the cooking classes, I guess, yeah?
Yep.
Cooking demonstrations, fantastic.
Well, we hope to have those. We hope to have different ways to help people. Yeah. I have gone so far. I've gone as far as I possibly could in terms of helping people with my efforts. I think so. What I've done has demonstrated that. We've written, as I mentioned, 13 national best-selling books. I've set up 2 international food companies. Yeah. And unfortunately, I've gone bankrupt under both of them. But one is still in business. It's called Dr. McDougall's Right Foods, and it's in 8,000 stores around the world, mostly in the U.S., but also in London. They have Dr. McDougall's Right Foods. So I started a couple of food companies, because of good fortune and a very supportive environment. I've been able to take a lot of risks.
Well, you're like an absolute walking encyclopedia, right? You cover every A to Z of food and disease, and your lifetime achievements are so immense. And, everybody they love your passion. By the way, just as a coincidence, my mom and dad are called John and Mary. Very cool. And like your dad, my dad brought us 7 children up to always speak the truth. So, we are the same. And, I'm a dreamer and whatever. It's been my life's work for the animals and the environment too. But, you are absolutely, I don't know in words how to describe you. You're the biggest eternal optimist I've ever come across. And you bring so much hope in the despair that other people have been going through. So, bless you for everything that you do every day. I also wanted to just touch on, I know your passion for the environment again, but just, how do we get, there's no one more excited listening to you than all the people that I know in the world, but how do we get out the revolving door? How do we get you into places where people have never heard of you? Because I know there are people that have never heard of you. How do we get you out the revolving door into, what do we have to do?
I don't know. I've tried.
That's the people we need to reach.
I know. I honestly think, and I've lived this way because it's helped me get through some tough days of asking the same question you're asking, is why is something so simple, something so effective, something so sensible, something that positively affects so many people, why has it been ignored? Well, you can go back to trite statements like follow the money. Yeah. And I have to believe that the message that you and I have been trying to spread around the world is only going to happen in terms of an effective audience. Mm-hmm. After that audience comes to be aware that they need us. And I'm sad to say, I guess I've felt a little bit better about myself in terms of pushing up against such a resistant wall by realizing that I'm not strong enough to punch through that wall. I have to wait until that wall weakens and is ready to accept what we have.
We need a huge army. We need a McDougall army growing.
Well, we could have that. Whatever you want to call it, we could have an army that fights against chronic illness.
Yeah.
That should have been an army. It should have been up fighting against the hospitals, the heart surgeons, the cancer therapists, with all of the lies, which are obvious and well published in the science. You talk about lies going on now in terms of COVID-19. I've listened to the liars when it comes to chronic disease for 50 years, and they come in the form of the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, the British Medical Journal. These people have vested interests that cause them to misspeak in favor of the industry that's funding them. And these journals are guilty. Yeah. Not to mention the government's tied in with the medical businesses, et cetera. Right. So I don't understand why there hasn't been a revolution against them. Yeah. Why not? Why haven't, we used to be out in the streets.
I know.
Burning our draft cards when the Vietnam War was going on. Well, I'll tell you what the difference was then. My number was up for a draft. Mm-hmm. Well, why aren't people out in this? Well, because your number's not up for a draft, I guess. Right. Or at least it hasn't been with chronic illness. And you say, well, how about climate change? It's going to kill me and all my kids, grandkids. Yeah, but it's slow death, and I'm still alive. So I can take it. I really can take it. Well, as I mentioned, I think I'll be here to see the end of days. And then, of course, we have what's going on right now, not only in terms of the COVID, but in terms of race relationships. Sure. Things have become so acute that people are not out in the streets. Well, now that they're out in the streets, stay out in the streets. Exactly. You got a lot more things to fix. Yeah. And they're as important, they're more important. They're more important than what you're doing now. Yeah. Not to take away the value of Black lives or any colored lives, not to take away the value of young people, et cetera, or white people, or what? We're not talking about that. We're talking about something more fundamental. We're talking about saving planet Earth with all the spiders and the snakes and the fish and the butterflies and the dragonflies. I don't know. I mean, I can't handle it.
Everything. No, it's immense. It's immense. And I remember many years ago when we were speaking, you said to me, Marlene, never give up because we have a world worth saving. And that was, way back before COVID-19, 5-6 years ago now. You're commendable. I don't know what else to say apart from, would you not think about running for president, start a new party? There you go. We could get you an army, or let's go to a new planet.
We can't do that. We have to save the one we have.
Exactly. I know.
I see, again, it may not resonate with you, but COVID-19 has really given me a chance to see a different future. Yeah. And, with all the horror going on and all the negatives you see out of it, maybe you can see it from the point of view that I do, and we can turn all of these different motivators into actions that make a difference long term. But why should we have an army? I'm talking about the U.S. military, where 80% of the people aren't eligible for drafts because they're too unhealthy. Why should we have an army where over 50% of the people that are in the military service trying to protect me? Why do we have an army where over half of them are too fat and sick to be in the service? This makes no sense. We should be up in revolt. for the chronic illness that's going on. Much less to talk about the distant, relevant future that's likely going to happen in 6 to 10 years.
Absolutely. We've definitely seen a big upsurge in Bill and I's own work, more contact from people, questions, people wanting health counselling, some people registering actually for our own coaching courses that we do for them to become teachers. So yes, we feel in a positive way, we have to stay positive because like you, if we get into a depressed state, we feel as if we're trying to help people understand why they have to do this. So we're looking as positively at the COVID-19 to say to people, stop the next one coming. What do you have to do? Hydrate, eat plants, exercise, get some sun. It's a done deal. It's that simple. And you've never changed your story in 50 years. You say the same thing now as you did then.
Yep.
The truth
yeah,
is
I think that's worked out well for me. Even though my son, who's a professor at OHSU Medical School, after he read the Start Solution, he read the first book I wrote called the McDougall Plan. He said, Dad, why did you write this Start Solution book? You're just repeating yourself after 50 years. And I said, well, son, the truth doesn't change. I think I said it much better. And by the way, the Start Solution is a worthwhile book.
Yeah.
I would encourage you.
It's perfect. I think it was one of the, I know I had the McDougall program book before that, but it's one of the ones that's on our recommended reading list
Good.
for our students.
Well, I've just as a sneak preview, Mary and I are being offered an opportunity to revise that book.
Oh, wonderful.
Add chapters on climate change and acute infections.
That's perfect.
So I don't know whether we're going to do it or not, but we have an offer with a money deal on the line. So.
Yeah, that would be fantastic and well needed. And 50 years of truth coming back up here and just adding in what's happening now. You got to do it. It's fantastic. Have you got anything else you would like to share?
No, I'm sure you take the time to teach people the practicality of eating.
Yeah.
The simplicity. In the new revision, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and maybe some people have some suggestions. Is I'm going to we were asked to do 10 new recipes, and I'm going to write little stories about the 10 recipes about populations of people who have survived.
Fantastic.
Very difficult times, like for the people in the Andes who've survived on potatoes, or the people in in Central America who survived on corn, or many stories in Western Europe, potatoes after World War II. Populations of people and they had their favorite recipes during those times. Anyway, that's what I'm going to focus on. It's little stories about survival with these 10 new recipes and actual recipes that reflect the kind of meals that people had to eat during these times.
Excellent, excellent. I was just creating something the other day with £1. I had to have £1 to go and find some vegetables to make something nourishing, and I done it. And it's coming up in one of my blogs for an article that I'm doing in London. So there you go. Well, you're just a complete inspiration to the world, and I wish you and Mary huge success. You've got to update Start Solution. The world needs it. And I look forward to seeing you again, not for another 5 years, but definitely in the near future. So thank you for your time, Dr. McDougall. You're an absolute star.
It was a pleasure. It really was. Spread the good news.